Some mysteries feel like they were never meant to be solved. A man checks into a hotel under a false name. He speaks to almost no one, keeps the room in complete darkness, and 3 days later he's found dying inside a locked room. No witnesses, no motive, no answers. Tonight, we revisit one of the strangest cases in American history, the man who spoke to no one. He arrived just after noon on January 2nd, 1935. A slim man in a dark overcoat, carrying almost nothing except a small, worn-out suitcase. He moved quietly, with an odd kind of stiffness, as if he didn't want anyone to notice the way he walked, or the way he looked. The hotel staff would later say that he seemed tense. Not nervous, not scared, just tense. Like a man who was trying very hard to appear ordinary. When he stepped up to the front desk of the President Hotel in Kansas City, he barely looked up. He asked for an interior room, one without a window facing the street. Something quiet, as he put it. He signed the register as Roland T. Owen, from Los Angeles. But even in that moment, something was off. He didn't write smoothly, as if the name wasn't really his. The clerk noticed two things immediately. First, the deep scar running over the left side of his head. And second, the strange emptiness of his suitcase. No clothes, no toiletries. Nothing that makes sense for a traveler checking in for days. Despite the peculiarities, the hotel was used to unusual guests. They handed him the key to room 1046. On the way up, the bellboy tried making small talk, but Owen barely responded. His answers were short, vague, almost whispered. When they reached the room, the bellboy turned on the lights, but Owen immediately turned them off again. He preferred the room dim, almost completely dark. He stood in silence for a moment before saying something unusual. "I don't like too much light." From the hallway, staff occasionally heard him pacing. No radio, no conversations, no movement beyond that slow, steady walk from one side of the room to the other. When the maid entered later to clean, she found him sitting in the dark, staring at the wall, as if lost in thought. He didn't ask for anything except towels. No meals, no extra blankets, no requests. But there was something else. Each time she entered, the phone would ring, and he would answer in that same quiet tone, saying only a few words, usually to someone he called Dawn. "No, Dawn," she heard him say once. "I don't want to eat now." Whoever Dawn was, he seemed to be the only person Owen was willing to speak to. The maid later recalled another strange detail. Even when she knocked, the door was sometimes left slightly open, held only by the security chain. Owen never apologized for it, never explained why. It was as if he didn't want anyone to see the room fully lit or fully open. That evening, another staff member saw a woman enter the elevator, heading to the 10th floor. She had long, dark hair and looked unsettled. She muttered something about meeting a man who wasn't acting right. Nobody connected it to Owen at that time. Hours later, the maid returned with fresh towels, and Owen was still sitting in the dark, answering the phone, declining food, and giving the same impression he had given since the moment he arrived. A man who wanted to be completely alone, yet was clearly waiting for someone. Not a single staff member could explain his behavior, but everyone agreed on one thing. He wasn't hiding from the hotel. He was hiding from someone else.
The next day, the strange behavior inside room 1046 only grew more unsettling. Every staff member who approached the door sensed the same thing, an atmosphere that felt heavy, tense, as if the room itself was holding its breath. When the maid knocked that morning, Owen's voice came from the darkness. He told her to enter, but he didn't turn on the lights. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, staring straight ahead with an expression that was impossible to read. She opened the curtains slightly to bring in some daylight, but he stood up quickly and closed them again. He didn't raise his voice, he never did, but he made it clear he wanted the room dim. Always dim. When she changed the bedding, she noticed something unusual. There was no suitcase anymore, no toothbrush, no clothes, nothing except a comb, a brush, and a single bottle of diluted sulfuric acid. It looked less like someone was staying there, and more like someone was hiding there. Throughout the morning, the phone rang several times. Each time, Owen answered immediately, as if waiting for the calls. His tone remained flat, controlled. Occasionally, the maid overheard fragments of conversation. "No, Dawn, I don't want to eat now. I'm not hungry." "Yes, I know." The name kept repeating, Dawn. The more she heard it, the more she wondered, was Dawn a friend? A handler? Someone watching him? Or someone he feared? Later that afternoon, a guest in a nearby room reported hearing Owen speaking to another man, but there was no record of anyone else visiting the room, and the maid swore she saw no one inside. Still, the voices people claimed to hear didn't match Owen's quiet tone. A deep voice, a louder one, and sometimes a woman. By evening, things grew stranger. A maid brought fresh towels, but the door was locked. When she knocked, Owen answered without moving toward it. He told her to leave them outside. But just seconds later, she heard what sounded like shuffling footsteps. 2 sets. Then a thud. Then silence. Another guest returning late passed a woman on the 10th floor with long, dark hair. She seemed angry, confused, whispering about a man who wouldn't let her leave. But she never went to the front desk. Nobody knew who she was. Around 10:30 that night, a guest on the 10th floor reported hearing arguing from room 1046. A man said, "I'm tired of this." A woman replied, too soft to understand. Then a loud crash, like furniture hitting the wall. When a hotel operator tried calling the room, the phone was abruptly cut off, disconnected from the wall. At 11:15 p.m., a guest heard a low groan coming from inside. When he knocked and asked if everything was fine, Owen answered calmly, "I'm fine." His voice was steady, normal. Too normal. It didn't match the sound the man had heard seconds earlier. By midnight, enough strange noises had been reported that the staff knew something was wrong, but Owen insisted he needed nothing. No help, no food, no visitors. Whoever he was waiting for, whoever Dawn was, it felt like the moment of meeting was getting closer. And room 1046 was becoming the center of a mystery no one could yet understand. Morning came with an eerie stillness on the 10th floor. The usual sounds of the hotel, doors closing, carts rolling, quiet conversations, felt strangely distant. Something about room 1046 seemed to draw the attention of every staff member, even those who had never met the man inside. At around 7 a.m., a switchboard operator noticed that the phone in 1046 was off the hook. Not unusual by itself, but it had been disconnected for hours. When the bellboy was sent to check on the room, he knocked softly. A faint voice answered, "Come in." But the door was locked. He knocked again. This time, the voice sounded weaker, almost struggling. "Turn on the lights." But again, locked. The bellboy assumed the guest was simply drunk or half asleep. Without more noise inside, he left the room alone. It was too early to assume anything was wrong. 2 hours later, the phone remained off the hook. This time, another bellboy was sent. When he reached the door, he knocked firmly. No response. He tried the handle, still locked. He called out to Owen, irritated, telling him to hang up the phone if he didn't want housekeeping to bother him. Then he heard it. A sound like something brushing against the carpet. Slow, unsteady, as if someone inside was struggling to move. "Put the phone back on the hook," the bellboy insisted again.
The noise stopped. Silence. He left, unsure of what to make of it. It wasn't until 11 a.m. that anyone realized how serious things were. A third staff member was sent to fix the phone. He knocked loudly. No answer. When he tried the handle, it gave slightly. The door was still locked, but not fully shut. He pushed harder, and the door opened a few centimeters, just enough to see inside. What he saw chilled him. Owen was crouched on the floor beside the bed, completely naked, his body covered in deep bruises and blood. His arms were wrapped awkwardly around his stomach, as if trying to hold himself together. The bedsheets were soaked, the walls stained, the carpet darkened by something far more sinister than spilled water. The employee froze. "Sir, what happened?" Owen lifted his head slowly. His eyes were half closed, unfocused, like he was slipping in and out of consciousness. "I fell," he whispered. But the room told a different story. The lamp was shattered, the phone ripped from the wall, furniture knocked out of place, and yet, the door had been locked from the outside. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign of anyone else. When help arrived and the police entered the room fully, Owen was still conscious, barely. They asked him who had done this. His answer was the last coherent thing he ever said. "Nobody." He said it with such certainty that the officers hesitated. Was he protecting someone? Afraid? Or was the truth something far stranger? As paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher, they noticed marks around his neck. Pressure marks, as if a cord or rope had been tied tightly. On his wrists, the same. On his chest, dark bruises shaped like fists or blunt objects. None of it matched the idea of a simple fall. At the hospital, he drifted in and out of consciousness. When a detective asked if he had been alone in the room, "I was alone," he whispered. "And who hurt you?" "Nobody did this." It was the last thing he ever said. By midnight, the man known as Roland T. Owen was dead, and the mystery of room 1046 had only just begun.
At the hospital, doctors worked quickly, but it was clear from the start that the man from room 1046 didn't have much time. His injuries were catastrophic: a fractured skull, stab-like wounds on his chest, deep bruising across his ribs, and marks on his wrists and ankles suggesting he had been bound. Yet when questioned, he insisted on the same impossible story, that no one had done this to him. He repeated it even as he drifted in and out of consciousness. "No one hurt me. I was alone." But his body said otherwise. Detectives pressed him again, asking who Dawn was, the name overheard on the hotel phone. Owen's eyes opened briefly, as if recognizing the name, but he said nothing. Within hours, he slipped into a coma. By midnight, he was gone. And that's when the story turned from strange to surreal. The investigators quickly discovered that Roland T. Owen didn't exist. The name, the address he gave, the details he signed in the hotel ledger, none of it was real. Fingerprints were sent out across the country, no matches. Photographs were published in newspapers nationwide, asking if anyone recognized the man. For months, no one came forward. He was buried in a simple grave in Kansas City, identified only as the unknown man. A few hotel staff members attended out of respect. The case seemed destined to fade into obscurity, until the funeral home received an unexpected phone call. A man, speaking calmly,
told the staff to delay the burial. He said he wanted to send money for a proper service. He refused to give his name. Weeks later, an envelope arrived with cash and a typed note. The burial went ahead. Then came flowers, white roses, with a card. Love forever. Louise. No one knew who Louise was. No one could trace the money. And the caller was never identified. The police believed that whoever paid for the funeral knew the victim's real identity. But if that was true, why keep it a secret? Why let a man die under a false name? What was he hiding from? And who was he meeting in that hotel room? Years passed. The case went cold. Then, decades later, a woman contacted a researcher after seeing a photograph of the unknown man. She believed he was her long-lost brother, Artemis Ogletree, who had vanished in 1934. The details matched. The scars matched. Even the timeline matched. But there was no definitive proof. And so the mystery of room 1046 remains, suspended between fact and speculation. A man with no name, visited by strangers, receiving calls from someone named Dawn, dying in a locked room, and buried by people who refused to reveal who he really was. A man who spoke to no one, yet left behind a silence so loud, the world is still listening. Even after nearly a century, the mystery of room 1046 refuses to settle into a simple explanation. Every new detail uncovered over the decades only deepened the sense that this was not just an unexplained death, but a life lived inside the shadows. After the discovery of the possible identity of the victim, Artemis Ogletree, investigators tried to reconstruct what happened in the months before he appeared at the President Hotel. Witnesses from his hometown recalled that he had left home suddenly, saying only that he was traveling for work. He was young, barely out of his teens, with no known enemies. And yet, something, or someone, had clearly been following him. Letters allegedly written by him were mailed to his mother long after his disappearance, but the phrasing was strange, the tone unfamiliar. One letter was typed, even though Artemis didn't know how to type. Another came from Chicago, then New York, then Los Angeles. They all carried the same message, that he was safe, working, traveling, and that he would return soon. His mother didn't believe any of it. She said the letters didn't sound like him. Police suspected that the letters were sent by whoever had been watching him, possibly the same person he kept speaking to in that hotel room, possibly Dawn, or possibly someone even more dangerous. When a detective studied the movements of the unknown caller who paid for the funeral, another strange detail emerged. The money had been mailed from a different state than the flowers. The voice on the phone didn't match the tone of the note enclosed with the cash. It was as if multiple people were involved, all trying to erase or overwrite the man's identity. And then there was the biggest unanswered question of all. How did Artemis, or Owen, or whoever he truly was, end up alone, naked, and mortally wounded in a room that was locked from the outside? No explanation fits neatly. A stranger slipping out quietly? A meeting gone wrong? A punishment carried out behind closed doors? Or a man trapped in a situation so dangerous that he chose, even in his final hours, to answer everything with the same word? Nobody. As the years passed, room 1046 became a legend, an unsolved riddle that historians, detectives, and true crime researchers return to again and again. a case suspended between truth and myth. A man remembered not for who he was, but for the mystery he left behind. And maybe that's the final layer of the story. A man who hid his name, avoided the light, spoke to almost no one, yet left behind a silence so unforgettable that the world is still trying to fill it. The truth about room 1046 may never be known, but the stranger who checked in under a false name ensured one thing: his story would never be forgotten. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. Stories like this one remind us how fragile truth can be and how many mysteries still wait in the dark. If you'd like to hear more cases like this, don't forget to leave a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe to Black Tapes. Your support helps new stories find their way to the light. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and good night.